The 16th century changed everything forever, and most people have no idea how insane it actually was. The 16th century. 10 mind-blowing facts about the century that changed everything forever. Picture this. While your ancestors were trying to survive another Tuesday, a handful of Europeans accidentally created the modern world, sparked religious wars that killed millions, and discovered that everything they thought they knew about the universe was completely wrong. Ready to have your mind blown? The year 1501 kicked off a century so packed with world-changing events that it makes our modern chaos look like a quiet Sunday afternoon. While the 15th century had set the stage, the 16th century was when Europe decided to go absolutely berserk and drag the entire planet along for the ride. But here's where things get really wild. The same century that gave us Renaissance masterpieces also gave us religious massacres. The same era that expanded human knowledge also burned people alive for thinking differently. This wasn't progress in a straight line. This was humanity having a complete identity crisis while accidentally becoming global. Fact number 1. Spain became so rich, it broke its own economy. Spanish treasure fleets were hauling so much American gold and silver back to Europe that they literally caused the first global economic crisis. We're talking about convoys carrying enough precious metal to buy entire kingdoms, sailing across oceans while being hunted by pirates who knew exactly how loaded these ships were. The numbers are absolutely insane. Between 1501 and 1600, Spanish America produced over 150,000 tons of silver. That's enough silver to make every person in Europe rich beyond imagination, except that's exactly what went wrong. When everyone has massive amounts of money, money becomes worthless. Spanish inflation got so out of control that a loaf of bread in 1901 cost what a fancy meal cost by 1600. Spanish nobles who thought they were set for life watched their wealth evaporate as prices skyrocketed. The Spanish crown, despite controlling the richest empire in human history, went bankrupt 4 separate times during this century. Meanwhile, that Spanish silver was flooding into China, creating the first truly global economy. Chinese merchants demanded silver for their goods. European traders paid with American silver, and suddenly, economic decisions made in Mexico were affecting rice prices in Beijing. The world had become financially connected in ways that nobody understood or could control. Fact number 2. Martin Luther accidentally destroyed medieval Christianity. Martin Luther just wanted to complain about corrupt church practices. Instead, he accidentally triggered religious wars that would kill 8 million people and permanently fracture European Christianity. When he nailed those 95 theses to that church door in 1517, he had no idea he was lighting a fuse that would explode across the entire continent. Thanks to Gutenberg's printing press, Luther's ideas spread faster than medieval authorities could suppress them. Within months, his writings were being read in every major European city. Within years, entire regions were rejecting papal authority. The Catholic Church's monopoly on Christian truth, which had lasted for over 1,000 years, was suddenly over. But the Protestant Reformation wasn't just about theology. It was about power, money, and control. German princes saw an opportunity to seize church property and reject imperial authority. English kings realized they could divorce whoever they wanted if they controlled their own church. French nobles discovered that religious differences were great excuses for political rebellion. The result was carnage. The French wars of religion turned neighbor against neighbor for over 30 years. The Dutch revolt against Spanish Catholic rule lasted 80 years. The German states were so devastated by religious warfare that some regions lost half their population. Europe had torn itself apart over questions that medieval people thought had been settled forever. Fact number 3. Copernicus proved everyone was wrong about everything. Nicolaus Copernicus looked at the night sky and realized that everything humanity thought it knew about the universe was completely backwards. In 1543, he published a book that moved Earth from the center of creation to just another planet orbiting the sun. And the psychological impact was devastating. For over 1,000 years, everyone knew that Earth was the center of the universe because it made perfect sense. Humans were God's special creation, so obviously everything else revolved around us. The sun, moon, planets, and stars all existed to serve human needs. Copernicus said, nope, we're just passengers on a rock flying through space. The Catholic Church immediately realized how dangerous this idea was. If Earth wasn't the center of the universe, then maybe humans weren't the center of God's attention. If the Bible was wrong about astronomy, maybe it was wrong about other things too. Church authorities tried to suppress Copernican theory, but the damage was already done. Scientists like Galileo took Copernican ideas and ran with them, using telescopes to prove that the universe was far stranger and larger than anyone had imagined. The comfortable medieval worldview where everything had its proper place was being replaced by an infinite cosmos that didn't care about human concerns at all. Fact number 4. The Ottomans almost conquered Europe, while Europeans were busy fighting each other. While European Christians were slaughtering each other over religious differences, the Ottoman Empire was systematically conquering European territory and came terrifyingly close to taking over the entire continent. Suleiman the Magnificent didn't just rule the most powerful empire of his time. He nearly ended European independence forever. In 1529, Ottoman armies besieged Vienna for the second time, and if they had succeeded, the map of Europe would look completely different today. Ottoman forces controlled the Balkans, dominated the eastern Mediterranean, and had turned the Black Sea into an Ottoman lake. European trade routes, European politics, and European military strategy all had to account for Ottoman power. Ottoman military superiority wasn't just about numbers. They had better organization, better technology, and better leadership than most European armies. Ottoman janissaries were professional soldiers who trained constantly, while European armies were mostly feudal levies who fought part-time. Ottoman artillery was more advanced, Ottoman logistics were more efficient, and Ottoman discipline was legendary. The psychological impact was enormous. Europeans had grown up thinking that Christian civilization was obviously superior to Islamic civilization, but Ottoman success suggested otherwise. Ottoman territories were often better governed, more tolerant, and more prosperous than European territories. European refugees frequently fled to Ottoman lands, seeking better opportunities. Only Ottoman overextension and European unity in desperate moments prevented complete Ottoman victory. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571 finally stopped Ottoman naval expansion, but it was a close thing. European Christianity survived the 16th century by the narrowest possible margin. Fact number 5. European diseases committed accidental genocide in America. European contact with American civilizations triggered the largest demographic catastrophe in human history, and most Europeans had no idea it was happening. Smallpox, typhus, and measles killed an estimated 90% of Native Americans, destroying civilizations that had existed for centuries. The Aztec Empire, which had dominated central Mexico for generations, collapsed not because of Spanish military superiority, but because epidemic diseases killed most of their population before Spanish armies even arrived. The Inca Empire suffered the same fate. European diseases spread faster than European explorers, destroying imperial administration before Spanish conquistadors could exploit it. This wasn't intentional biological warfare. Europeans didn't understand disease transmission well enough to weaponize it deliberately. But the effects were more devastating than any military campaign could have achieved. Entire regions were depopulated, sophisticated agricultural systems were abandoned, and complex political structures simply vanished. The ecological consequences were equally dramatic. Native American agricultural management had shaped American landscapes for thousands of years. When native populations collapsed, forests regrew over abandoned farmland so extensively that it may have contributed to global climate change. The Little Ice Age might have been partially caused by American reforestation after demographic collapse. European colonization succeeded not because Europeans were superior colonists, but because they inherited continents where most of the original inhabitants had already died. The ease of European settlement in America was built on an accidental genocide that most Europeans never acknowledged or understood. Fact number 6. Elizabeth I turned England into a pirate nation. Queen Elizabeth I had a problem. Spain controlled most of the world's wealth, and England was basically broke. Her solution was brilliant and completely illegal. She turned English sea captains into government-sponsored pirates and let them rob Spanish treasure fleets while maintaining plausible deniability. Francis Drake circumnavigated the globe while systematically looting Spanish territories in the Pacific. His voyage returned profits of over 4,000%, making his investors fabulously wealthy and providing Elizabeth with enough money to modernize the English navy. When Spanish ambassadors complained about English piracy, Elizabeth just shrugged and said she couldn't control independent sea captains. The English defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 was the culmination of this piracy strategy. Spanish attempts to invade England were motivated partly by decades of English attacks on Spanish shipping. When the invasion failed, English piracy became even more aggressive and systematic. English privateering wasn't just about immediate profits. It was about breaking Spanish monopolies on global trade. English captains established trading relationships in regions where Spanish law prohibited foreign commerce. English pirates forced their way into markets that Spain had claimed exclusively. This piracy to empire strategy worked so well that it became the template for English global expansion. English success in North America, the Caribbean, and eventually Asia all began with illegal attacks on established Spanish and Portuguese territories. Elizabeth had discovered that piracy could be more profitable than legitimate commerce. Fact number 7. Japan decided to lock out the entire world. While Europeans were desperately trying to expand globally, Japan took one look at European colonization and said absolutely not. In 1543, Portuguese traders accidentally landed in Japan and introduced firearms that completely revolutionized Japanese warfare. Within decades, Japanese armies were using guns more effectively than most European forces. But Japanese leaders quickly realized that European traders brought more than just technology. They brought Christianity, colonial ambitions, and political interference. When Christian missionaries started converting Japanese nobles and peasants, creating divided loyalties that threatened social stability, Japanese authorities decided that foreign contact was more dangerous than foreign isolation. The solution was brilliant and unprecedented. Japan would simply close itself off from the rest of the world. By 1600, Japanese authorities had expelled most foreign traders, banned Christianity, and established policies that would keep Japan isolated for over 2 centuries. While European powers were fighting each other for global dominance, Japan chose complete independence. This wasn't just xenophobia, it was strategic genius. Japan avoided the religious wars that were tearing Europe apart, the colonial exploitation that destroyed American civilizations, and the economic disruption that Spanish silver was causing globally. Japanese isolation preserved Japanese culture, political independence, and social stability, while the rest of the world descended into chaos. Fact number 8. Russia conquered Siberia, while nobody was paying attention. While Europeans were focused on Atlantic exploration and religious warfare, Russia quietly conquered the largest territorial expansion in human history. Russian fur traders and Cossack warriors crossed the Urals and systematically conquered Siberia, adding over 5 million square miles to Russian territory in less than a century. This wasn't just impressive, it was logistically impossible. Siberian distances were so vast that communication between Russian outposts could take months. Siberian winters were so brutal that they killed European explorers who thought they understood cold weather. Siberian indigenous peoples had been successfully resisting foreign conquest for centuries. Russian success came from adapting to Siberian conditions rather than trying to impose European methods. Russian fur traders learned indigenous survival techniques. Russian administrators adopted local political arrangements, and Russian settlers intermarried with indigenous populations. Instead of destroying existing systems, Russians co-opted them. The economic impact was enormous. Siberian fur trade provided Russia with luxury goods that could compete in European markets. Siberian resources would eventually make Russia a global power capable of challenging European dominance. Most importantly, Siberian expansion gave Russia strategic depth that would prove crucial in future conflicts. European powers had no idea this was happening until it was too late to prevent it. While Spain and Portugal were fighting over American territories, Russia had quietly become the largest country in the world. Russian expansion proved that territorial conquest could be more valuable than maritime commerce. Fact number 9. The Dutch invented capitalism while fighting for independence. The Dutch revolt against Spanish rule didn't just create an independent Netherlands, it accidentally invented modern capitalism. Dutch merchants, facing Spanish economic warfare and military occupation, developed financial innovations that would revolutionize global commerce and make tiny Holland richer than massive empires. Spanish authorities tried to destroy Dutch commerce by blocking traditional trade routes and confiscating Dutch assets. Dutch response was to create new financial instruments that couldn't be controlled by traditional political authority. Dutch banks issued credit that could be transferred across international borders. Dutch merchants created joint stock companies that could raise capital from multiple investors. The Dutch East India Company, established in 1602, became the world's first multinational corporation. It could raise enormous amounts of capital, coordinate commercial activities across continents, and operate independently of any single government. The company was so successful that it paid dividends for over 2 centuries while conquering territories larger than most European countries. Dutch financial markets became so sophisticated that they attracted investment from across Europe. Amsterdam became the financial capital of the world because Dutch innovations made capital more mobile and profitable than traditional land-based wealth. Dutch capitalism proved that commercial success could create political power that rivaled military conquest. The irony is perfect. Spanish attempts to crush Dutch independence created the economic system that would eventually make Dutch merchants richer than Spanish nobles. The Dutch had discovered that financial innovation could be more powerful than military force. Fact number 10. Shakespeare accidentally documented the end of medieval England. William Shakespeare thought he was just writing popular entertainment for London audiences. Instead, he accidentally created the most detailed psychological portrait of a civilization in transition from medieval to modern values. His plays document exactly how English society was processing the cultural chaos of the 16th century. Shakespeare's historical plays show medieval concepts of honor, loyalty, and divine kingship colliding with Renaissance ideas about individual ambition, political calculation, and personal choice. His characters struggle with moral dilemmas that medieval people thought had clear answers, but Renaissance people found impossibly complex. The psychological complexity of Shakespearean characters reflects a society where traditional social roles no longer provided clear guidance for human behavior. Hamlet can't decide whether to trust medieval concepts of honor or Renaissance ideas about rational analysis. Macbeth discovers that traditional loyalty conflicts with personal ambition in ways that medieval morality couldn't resolve. Shakespeare's audiences were living through the same cultural transition that his characters experienced. English society was abandoning medieval certainties without having developed modern alternatives. Social mobility was increasing, religious authority was fragmenting, and political power was becoming more centralized and more arbitrary. Most remarkably, Shakespeare's psychological insights proved more durable than the political events of his time. While 16th century politics became historical curiosities, Shakespearean characters remained psychologically accurate portraits of people caught between conflicting value systems. Shakespeare had accidentally documented what it felt like to live through the death of one civilization and the birth of another. But here's where the 16th century gets absolutely mind-bending. All of these seemingly separate events, Spanish inflation, religious wars, scientific revolution, Ottoman expansion, American demographic collapse, and English piracy, were actually connected in ways that nobody at the time understood. Spanish silver was funding Ottoman expansion against European Christians. Protestant Reformation was weakening European unity against Ottoman attacks. American demographic collapse was providing resources for European expansion. Scientific discoveries were undermining religious authority just when religious unity was most necessary. The century wasn't just chaotic. It was systematically destroying medieval civilization while accidentally creating the modern world. The 16th century revealed something terrifying about human civilization. We could accidentally change everything while trying to change nothing. Europeans who thought they were preserving Christian civilization actually destroyed it. Spanish conquistadors who thought they were extending European power actually created global economic systems that nobody could control. Scientists who thought they were understanding God's creation actually proved that human beings weren't the center of the universe. This wasn't progress in any direction that anyone had planned. This was humanity stumbling blindly into modernity while trying to hold on to medieval certainties. The 16th century proved that historical change could be faster, more violent, and more unpredictable than anyone had imagined possible. And that's how the 16th century accidentally created the modern world while trying to preserve the medieval one. Every major crisis of our current era, global economic instability, religious conflict, scientific uncertainty, demographic displacement, and imperial competition, can be traced back to developments that 16th century people thought they understood, but absolutely didn't. If this video blew your mind, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the centuries that shaped our world. Drop a comment below and let me know which of these facts shocked you the most. And if you're ready to have your assumptions about history completely destroyed, check out our video on the 17th century, where things get even more insane. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.